Funding for this program is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by annual financial support from viewers like you.
New York is a city with an unenviable reputation. It's the power base of the FBI's most formidable, ruthless, and long-lasting foe, the Mafia, or La Cosa Nostra, the LCN, as it's called. Special Agent Lynn DeVecchio has spent more than 25 years pursuing the LCN, a criminal organization that nationwide has an income second only to that of the government. In his time, DeVecchio's investigated all of the 5 mafia families in New York and does not pull his punches when it comes to the characters of the LCN godfathers.
Carmine Persico, the boss of the Colombo family, is a short, vindictive, Napoleonic complex man. There's probably no more ruthless individual than Carmine Persico. The Bonanno family boss, Joseph Messino, is a portly, outwardly friendly individual, but would not hesitate to kill you if it meant furthering his goals. John Gotti, the boss of the Gambino family, is an extremely well-dressed, very charismatic man who would kill you at the drop of a hat. Victor Musso, the boss of the Lucchese family, is a gruff, dangerous individual, almost to the point of being a wild beast, if you will. The boss of the Genovese family, Chin Gigante, is a long-time wise guy who has developed an act over the last 15, 20 years of being mentally deficient, which has saved him from going to jail.
New York has about 150 agents fighting the LCN, with around 7,000 mafia members or associates involved in organized crime in the city. They've got their work cut out for them. But there's no lack of confidence on the squads.
The FBI is definitely winning the war. We're making the cost of doing business very dear, and we're putting a lot more of them in jail, and with market success.
When John Gotti was sent off to jail in 1992, he joined a growing list of mafia mobsters who've fallen foul of the FBI. The mob's been hurt, but can it really be beaten?
Most Americans don't realize the impact of organized crime on their daily lives. Good examples of that can be found right here at this table. The tablecloths and the napkins that are used by restaurants are controlled by organized crime in many of the big cities. They launder them and they deliver them to the restaurant. So too the beverages used by restaurants, wine, beer, are in the same fashion controlled by organized crime. Some of the more common sites you'll see are private carting companies coming in to pick up the refuse from a restaurant. All of those companies, virtually, are controlled in one way or another by elements of organized crime. To get any construction done in this city, or in any city, requires the use of labor unions. And the organized crime controls most of those unions, from laborers to carpenters to electricians, so that along every step of the way, kickbacks are given to organized crime. And the control of a union is something that gives organized crime one of its greatest sources of power, because they virtually control entire industries. La Cosa Nostra brings in billions and billions of dollars every year, and they continue to maintain this huge industry through extortion, through murder, and ultimately through the killing of their own. They're lawbreakers, they're murderers. They'll do anything for $1, and if you stand in their way, they'd cut you down in a heartbeat.
The FBI has to take considerable risks to combat such a ruthless opponent, and the most high-risk technique of all is undercover work. Joe Pistone has managed to get closer to the LCN than any other FBI agent. In 1976, he went undercover, posing as a thief in a covert operation against the mob that should have lasted 6 months. He didn't come out for 6 years. The Mafia was so fooled, it even asked him to become a fully fledged member. For security, his face is obscured.
To be a good undercover agent, you have to have an individual who is assured of themselves and is secure in what they're doing and has confidence in their abilities to carry out the assignment. I grew up basically on the streets. I knew the LCN, I knew how they operated. So I didn't have to go through a learning process of being a mob guy. I have a little bit of an ego. I am self-confident in my abilities on the street, what I can do and what I can't do. Once I get into something, I like to see it through the end and finish it.
Pistone took on a completely false identity. He became Donnie Brasco, a jewel thief. He stopped living with his family and had to see them in secret. He stopped going into the FBI office and began working hard to persuade his contacts of his criminal credentials.
Dealing with individuals in the Mafia, they do not take to outsiders. So basically what I did was I hung around, got my face seen around, and it took probably 7-8 months before I got into conversation with anybody that eventually led me to meet other people.
For a time, Donnie Brasco was followed to find out if he was really a thief. Eventually, he got to know 2 important members of the Mafia.
Lefty was a real 24-hour-a-day Mafia individual. If you were looking for a guy to put in a movie, this would be the guy you would pick. He had a lot of mood swings from being a stone killer to being a guy that loved his grandkids. I'd eat over his house a couple nights a week. So I was really tight with him. And Sonny Black was our captain. Sonny was very powerful in the family. And at one point, he was the acting boss of the Bonanno family. He was also a stone killer, but the type of guy that when you were alone with him, you could fool around, kid around, and not discuss Mafia business. That was the difference between Sonny and Lefty. So it not only was with both these guys a relationship that was based on the illegal activities regarding the Mafia, but it was a relationship that was based on the friendship and a social type relationship.
Undercover agents, to be sure, are quite effective because they can go into court and testify. They have the credibility of being an agent, of being in law enforcement, and the fact that they have experienced on a first-hand basis and seen on a first-hand basis the criminal activities that occur. We don't use the undercover techniques often, only in selected cases, and there is a considerable amount of risk to any undercover operation.
Keeping his real identity a secret for 6 years took deft footwork. Pistone had to watch out for chance meetings with anyone who knew who he really was. He had to communicate with his office without arousing the suspicions of his Mafia contacts. He had to watch everything he said to make sure he didn't slip up.
The conversation is basically how to make money. What scores are they going to do? How are they going to get over? And also, how are they going to stay in power, worrying about somebody else taking away their power base. And that's basically what the conversation is about. And then you handle all your businesses, illegal activities, whatever you're in. There are certain illegal activities you can get involved in with the approval of the Department of Justice. Gambling activities, bookmaking, sports betting, as far as committing crimes, violence. You cannot get involved in any crimes of violence unless it's a spur of the moment type thing where, you know, you're saving your life or someone else's life.
The more he was trusted by the mob, the more valuable was the information that came Pistone's way. In the end, he did so well, he was offered the chance of becoming a full LCN member, a made guy, as they're known. But the entrance fee was too high for the FBI. He had to kill another mobster to prove his worth.
It had proved and showed how well I had infiltrated and penetrated the Bonanno family, that I was trusted to kill individuals that were made guys. And in fact, I was due to become a made guy myself in December, and of course, we ended the operation in July, which showed how much they thought of me by proposing me for membership, become an actual member of the family.
It took Sonny and Lefty 2 weeks to accept that the man they'd known for 6 years as Donnie Brasco was in fact an FBI agent. The LCN reacted quickly and predictably to this breach of mafia security.
Sonny Black was killed 17 days after he was told that this was an FBI undercover operation. And Ruggiero was arrested the day he was due to get killed. The mafia was going to kill him because they had vouched for me and introduced me to other high-ranking members of the Bonanno family and also other families. I had, you know, I didn't want to see anybody get killed. I didn't want to see Sonny get killed, but I always maintained throughout the operation that these guys were killers. They killed people who were close to them, who they knew for years. They wouldn't have hesitated to kill me if they thought I was an undercover agent, or more so if I was an informant. So, you know, it's part of the job. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. That's the attitude that I had to take to complete my job throughout the undercover operation.
Since the operation, Pistone has had to live in hiding. The 6 years Joe Pistone spent undercover produced a wealth of evidence and a spate of trials. Around 200 LCN members from a number of organized crime families were jailed as a direct result of the investigation.
Joe Pistone was very successful, gave us an incredible amount of information, which caused a serious problem with the Bonanno family. In fact, it took them out of action for many, many years and crippled the hierarchy as a result.
Despite the best efforts of the FBI, La Cosa Nostra, the mafia, still has its claws dug deep into American society. A wide range of illegal money-making rackets, from drug dealing to gambling and prostitution, are today under the mob's control. The infection runs deep. Even the annual celebration of Italian life in America, the San Gennaro Festival, is haunted by the specter of organized crime. The festival fills the streets of Little Italy, New York, each September. It commemorates the life of a bishop who died a martyr's death. According to the FBI, the LCN forces traders to pay a premium for their stalls and extorts a percentage of their profits. No one complains for fear of the consequences. La Cosa Nostra has grown into a monster. For much of the time it was expanding, the FBI just ignored it. The LCN was in its infancy in 1924 when J. Edgar Hoover first became FBI director. The informed consensus is that for the next 30 years, he did nothing to prevent the rise of the most profitable crime organization in the country.
When I went through training school as a brand new FBI agent, the subject of organized crime never came up, never discussed. And of course, immediately upon arrival in the field, we became aware that organized crime was a large, comprehensive criminal enterprise. We didn't have an investigation of the leadership and all of the players involved. We dealt with it case by case as the need might come about. So we weren't approaching the problem realistically or practically or very effectively.
Why Hoover was so slow off the mark is still a matter of fierce debate. There's speculation that he was a homosexual who was being blackmailed by the mob. Some say his overriding concern about communism blinded him to the dangers of the mafia. There's still no definitive answer.
There was not, at that time, there were not federal laws that in any way empowered the FBI to get into this type of investigation, such as came along in later years. I acknowledge that if he had felt a real need to do that, he could have asked Congress to pass such legislation, but he didn't feel there was a need at that time.
I don't give the lack of jurisdiction excuse any credibility whatsoever. The first federal anti-racketeering statute was on the books as early as 1934. If you're the FBI director and you're going to confront organized crime and do it very effectively and aggressively, as you should, you're going to be dealing with political figures who've been corrupted and who are part and parcel of this criminal enterprise. You're going to be stepping on a lot of political toes, and whether that was part of Mr. Hoover's thought processes or not, I have no way of knowing, but he was certainly perceptive enough to understand that, and he was very careful about not rocking a political boat.
The FBI was after kidnappers, bank robbers, people who were stealing automobiles. We were after people who passed bad checks. These are things that you could see and that people could identify with. And when the FBI investigated them, they made arrests, and it helped to let the people know we were on the job. And it got publicity for the FBI. It helped the FBI's image.
Bank robberies have been cut in half. Extortionists have been consistently apprehended, and other forms of federal offenses have been vigorously prosecuted.
Organized crime would have been a long-time operation similar to the investigation of the Communist Party. But the attitude in many parts of the country, well, they were just shooting each other up. If they want to do that, who cares? And there was somewhat of that attitude, and why get involved in it? So we didn't.
In 1957, a chance meeting at a small motel in New York State eventually forced J. Edgar Hoover to take action against the mafia. Two policemen were investigating a check fraud in the Parkway Motel in Vestal when they saw the son of a well-known criminal enter the building. He was Joe Barbera, Jr. The officers watched as he reserved a number of rooms at the motel.
Well, it was just a coincidence that we were here on another investigation, and we noticed Joseph Barbera, Jr. walk in the front door. And we stepped out of sight because we know Joseph Barbera, and we know his father. His father had a criminal background, and we were very suspicious of why he was here. And then when he registered for 5 rooms and would not give any names, that his father would take care of the bill, that's why we became suspicious.
The two policemen kept a discreet watch outside the motel as the guests arrived. Joe Barbera Sr. had already served time for armed robbery. The police thought he was now running an illegal whiskey still. The next morning, they followed the guests up to his luxury home a few miles away, near a small town called Appalachian.
Well, after we pulled into the driveway, we could observe 7 or 8 cars parked in the driveway here. And back of the guest house, or garage as you want to call it, probably 20 or 30 cars are parked up in the field. And that's up here beyond this house and the main house over here. We started taking license numbers, and some of them started to talk back and forth very excitedly. And some other people come around, coming from the house as well as from behind by the barbecue pit. And some of the local clientele knew us, who we were. And now immediately they became very upset, and they started to run. And they ran into the fields up there and back into the woods and just every direction.
Sergeant Vasisco had stumbled across a meeting of 75 of the most important LCN figures in the country. They said they were paying respects to a sick man. The police didn't believe them and pulled many in for questioning. No charges were brought, but the Appalachian incident was to be a turning point in the fight against organized crime.
Well, these people are known to have long criminal records, and they're involved in all types of crime, criminal activity of the underworld. And they were all from the same type of background. And they came from all over the United States and as far away as Cuba to attend this meeting. So it had to be a very powerful meeting to get all these people together at one time in one place to have their discussions.
So it was clear proof that there was a mafia?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That wasn't what the boss of the local FBI office thought. He was a Hoover man through and through.
Well, they didn't want to be bothered. They said they weren't going to come down and didn't appear. And then later, the agent in charge went public and said it was just a picnic and a barbecue at the Barbera home for his friends, that there was no such thing as a mafia.
The press had a field day. For perhaps the first time since he took over the FBI, Hoover faced a public drubbing.
Criticism of Mr. Hoover was not commonplace. In matter of fact, it was rare. But this editorial very rightfully and properly took him to task. It said, what has he done about organized crime? It's obviously a nationwide, organized business. The business of crime is well organized. The machinery is well oiled. How on earth has it grown to such an extent, and what has he done about it? And of course, he had no answer.
Hoover had to make up a lot of lost ground. He had little available information about the LCN. He needed raw intelligence fast, and he found it in Chicago, a city with a long and unsavory connection with organized crime.
Public enemy number one, they don't come any bigger than Alphonse Capone. From the nothingness of a small-time...
The city that gave birth to the notorious Al Capone had, by the 60s, spawned another blood-soaked outlaw.
Sam Giancana probably was the guy that I had more disrespect for than any other mobster in the history of Chicago. He was just the worst kind of a thug. I've had at least 50 confrontations with Sam Giancana. He killed 13 people that we could document by his own hands. We just hated each other.
Special Agent Bill Romer volunteered for a high-risk mission against his old enemy. He was a tough fighter for the FBI.
Mr. Hoover felt that the two things that we should do was to develop informants inside the mob who could tell us about what they were doing, and the second thing was to put microphones inside the strategic headquarters and meeting places of the mob so that we could listen to their daily conversations and determine just exactly what all their plans were.
Romer and 3 other agents were sent on a clandestine mission to bug Sam Giancana's headquarters. With Hoover's blessing, the 4 FBI agents became 4 FBI burglars. Break-ins were widely condemned when the Bureau used them against political activists, but no one's ever complained about Romer's team.
We had heard that there was a guard inside with a shotgun, and he'd have every valid reason to shoot us as we came in, thinking that we were breaking and entering, or at least that would be his excuse for killing us. The other problem we had was that the police were guarding this place, and we were afraid that they would catch us. And if they did catch us, it was a situation with J. Edgar Hoover that he said that if we were caught, we were going to be considered rogue agents, and he was going to disown us, and we would lose our job, we would probably go to jail for breaking and entering, and all kinds of dire consequences would have taken place.
Giancana held his meetings in a room in the back of a restaurant on the outskirts of the city. The agents had tricked a janitor into giving them a key. In the dead of night, in August 1961, they crept into the building to plant the microphone they hoped would lift the lid on the mafia.
This was the headquarters of Sam Giancana when he was the boss of the Chicago mob in the 1960s. This is the place where he directed all his associates, where he brought them in and gave them orders and so forth. So we decided that we had to have a bug here, a hidden microphone here. So what we did, of course, this machinery wasn't here, and it was a different situation at the time, but we put a microphone down there in the baseboard, in the skirting board, and we were able to listen to all the affairs of the Chicago mob. We learned about their plans to murder. We learned about their plans to corrupt public officials. We learned for the first time all of the things that the mob did and how they did it and so forth. It was just invaluable. There's just no question that this was a real breakthrough in the investigation of organized crime.
Hidden microphones in Chicago and elsewhere produced compelling evidence of the mafia's insidious influence. The Attorney General, Robert Kennedy, steered new anti-racketeering laws through Congress, giving Hoover tough new powers to deal with the mob.
The whole structure of our investigations changed from investigations of individual acts or activities to a broad, pure intelligence-type investigation, such as you had in espionage matters. So that we singled out known members or suspected members of organized crime, and we did general investigations on them, attempt to develop all the information that we could on them to fit them into a crime.
Electronic surveillance was not sufficient for the FBI. The Bureau also needed informers to give it enough detailed inside information to bring mobsters to justice. Persuading members of an organization ruled by fear and bloodshed to inform on their colleagues was not going to be easy. But it was a crucial task, as agents who worked against the mob in the 60s well knew.
There's no way that you could make a meaningful case against any LCN family without the cooperation of confidential sources. That's almost the lifeblood of our intelligence gathering system. We can't do without them. You have to attack it from within. You have to reach into the organization and get a hold of somebody who really knows what's going on and can provide you with the right information. A good informant will tell you more in 5 minutes than you can find out on your own in 5 months, if you ever find out. What you have to find out through a lot of hard work on the street is what will make that individual cooperate with you. What are the right buttons to push? What motivates that person to cooperate with you? It could be money, something as simple as money. It could be vengeance against another member of the family, or maybe somebody outside of the family. Oftentimes, one of the best ways to do it is to get a person in a very compromising position, criminally speaking. Try and make a case against that person, and when you do, then perhaps you're in a position to offer some consideration for that person's cooperation with you. If you can reach that point, then you might just be able to develop a really good source.
I started cooperating with the Bureau through Ronnie in as much as I was a part of a union situation. And I seen a lot of atrocities and what I considered a horror show as far as how the so-called organized crime families, not just in the area I live, but in other areas, pretty much rule these people's lives from the time they woke up to the time they went to bed, and in some cases, how they slept at night. If I would have got caught, I wouldn't be here right now. And I'm sure if they found me right now, I may not be around much longer. But no, it's obviously very risky. You're dealing with some very dangerous people.
He's been a provider of outstanding information. He's been an integral part in the Bureau's fight against labor racketeering. And from all accounts, it's been extremely beneficial.
The nation's underworld gets the unwelcome spotlight of publicity as the Senate's Investigations Subcommittee begins new hearings on crime.
The first member of the Mafia publicly to break the sacred vow of silence that binds all those who join the LCN did so in a blaze of publicity in Congress in 1963.
These hearings always attract a large number of spectators. This one is particularly crowded, awaiting the first public appearance of Joseph Velaki, the convicted hoodlum whose confessions to the FBI have reportedly put a price of $100,000 on his head by the infuriated Mafia.
Velaki was in jail when Special Agent Jim Flynn had gone to see him, at a time when even the name Cosa Nostra was a closely guarded Mafia secret. Flynn used a little psychology to persuade his subject to talk.
I laid it on the line to him, and I said that I'm here to find out what you know about the organization that you have belonged to. So there's no sense in sparring, talking about the outfit or the group or anything else. I haven't got the time to waste listening to that. I'll give you the first part of a two-word sentence. You give me the second, and then we'll continue talking. So he looked at me, and again, very suspiciously. And I said, Cosa. And he stopped. And here's a man now who's been inside a while, and he's pale, but he paled more than that. He says, you know about the Cosa Nostra. And from that point on, he had violated everything he ever stood for. It was all out in the open.
Member of any such organization? Yes, I am. What is the name of it? Cosa Nostra in Italian. Cosa Nostra in Italian. Our thing and our family in English. Our thing and our family in English.
I knew I was in for a long haul, a lot of work. But I knew that we were turning a key in a door that had never been turned before, never opened before. And that what came out of it could only benefit us as far as being an investigative outfit determining what was going on in organized crime.
Who do you think ordered the killing of... Well, in that case, with Willie Morelli, that was, as long as they have made it official that he was sick, that you could say was by argumentazione. That you could say. By who? Argumentazione means they all agreed. In other words, this
he gave us detailed information with regard to how the different murders were planned and executed, particularly by him when he supervised such an assignment.
It was sort of, we put it, they're supposed to be a mercy killing because he was sick.
There was nothing withheld by Velaki in his direct testimony to the United States Senate. In fact, he became quite a showman Here was one of the members now bearing the entire operation of the group. The first time they'd ever heard of La Cosa Nostra, the first time they'd ever seen anybody say that they had to burn paper and swear an oath. I think it had a great deal to do with educating the American public.
What I'm telling you, what I'm exposing to you and the press and everybody, this is my doom. This is the promise I'm breaking that even if I talk, I should never talk about this, and I'm doing so. That's my best way to...
That is the highest oath you'll talk.
Right.
Valachi identified literally hundreds of members of the New York family and some members of families outside of New York. He identified all of the families throughout the United States. He identified the existence of the commission, the ruling body of the mafia. I think he convinced any doubters, doubting Thomases in the FBI even, that there was an organized crime group. And he certainly put fear in the hearts of La Cosa Nostra. This was the worst thing that could have happened to them.
Joseph Valachi's testimony cast a powerful spotlight on the mafia. It wasn't long before it became a vote winner.
Today we do want to serve notice on all syndicates of crime that victory will come. It will come through the joint efforts and the cooperation of all concerned Americans. It will come through a new partnership between federal and state and local governments. Together, we will match our determination with effective action, fairly taken, to rid our land of the menace of organized crime.
Almost 30 years after that tough presidential talk, and more than 20 after Hoover's death, the LCN is still a major criminal force. The mafia is like a mythical hydra. As soon as one head is cut off, another grows in its place.
We were jailing a lot of people, but we found that we weren't having any particular effect. It was kind of a promotional system because you would go to jail and the next member of organized crime would move up and take your place. And for them, it was a promotional opportunity.
What happened when the authorities tried to clear the mob out of Fulton Fish Market in New York, one of the largest in the country, was typical of the formidable problem they faced. $120 million worth of fish are traded at Fulton each year. It's big business, and 25% of it went straight into the LCN's coffers. The mob succeeded because it dominated the main trade union in the market, the Seafood Workers Union.
We believe the mob has controlled the union since the 1930s. By controlling the union, they control the entire workforce in the market. And by controlling the entire workforce in the market, they have the ability to slow down work or stop work completely. In a market where all the items are perishable, that's a tremendous power. Essentially, slowing the market down, even for a day, could cause enormous economic harm. Therefore, by controlling the workforce, they can control everyone in the market.
There's an unhealthy silence about all the LCN's activities, and it's no different in the market. Most traders keep their head down, obey the rules, and say nothing. One was brave enough to explain the problem on the condition that his face and voice were disguised.
They controlled the loading, the unloading, the people who worked in the market, and anything that had to do with the distribution of fish, the incoming of fish, anything like that. They had their hand in there. You had to pay for parking, loading, and unloading that wasn't done. The service wasn't done. You still had to pay for it. And you weren't that well protected even though you were paying for it. You know, things like that.
What if you refused to pay?
You couldn't operate in the market. You had to abide by the market rules. You just wouldn't be allowed. You just wouldn't be allowed. There'd be some severe consequences to come on you. Like, your fish should be missing. Anything that could happen to you in any way would happen.
Physical violence?
There'd be that too.
The mafia uses selective violence to maintain control. A killing every now and again is sufficient to keep everyone in line.
In the 80s, two individuals were shot. One was shot and killed. One was shot and seriously wounded but recovered from his wounds. The first individual was killed because he was committing thefts in the market without the sanction of the Genovese family. The other individual was shot right down the street from the market. It was believed that he was a witness in a pending criminal case, and that was the reason that he was shot. He survived his wounds.
The government thought they could end mob rule in the market by prosecuting the two mafia bosses who ran the Seafood Workers Union, Carmine and Peter Romano. They were both jailed for extortion.
It had a very small effect on ending anything that went on in the market. There were other people that came in to take over their situations while they were either in jail or forced out of the market. There were other people that took over. They always have people behind them to step in and take over the situation because no one wants to lose the market. It's that way in every area of organized crime.
The mafia is an organization, but the FBI only investigated individuals. That's why it had little long-term impact. In 1979, agents found what they believed could be the solution.
I will not tell you that the sun has set on the mob in this country.
An academic named Robert Blakey was giving lectures about an anti-racketeering law that he'd helped to draft 10 years before. It's known as RICO. It hadn't been used against the LCN because no one realized its potential.
Simply will not be around. The heads of the 5 families in New York were indicted, tried, and convicted under RICO. And I'd like to introduce to you the agent who probably as much as anybody contributed to that prosecution. Mike? Thank you.
Mike Ryman and 5 colleagues from the New York FBI office went to listen to Blakey's lectures. RICO was revolutionary.
Well, I've got some good
It helped the FBI to prosecute individuals in criminal organizations and ban them from the businesses they'd corrupted. No longer would it be necessary to prove they'd committed a specific crime. Ryman thought RICO could be the answer they'd been looking for.
In listening to the RICO lectures, we had sort of an awakening that in this theory of prosecution, in this theory of investigation, might hold the answers to give us the sort of tactical and strategic means by which we could accomplish our objectives, and that was to strike a crippling or killing blow to organized crime.
It was a sharp break with the past. Traditional investigations are like Sherlock Holmes. You go from a known crime to an unknown criminal. RICO, because it focused on criminal organizations, the membership which you knew, you went from a known criminal to an unknown crime. And that's really the world upside down.
It really was a shift in a paradigm. It was a shift that was so radical that many of the people who did it found out that they liked it. They really liked to do it.
Instead of looking at individuals, you look at organizations. Instead of looking at single crimes, you look at patterns of diverse crime. That required a massive change in how investigators investigated it, how lawyers and prosecutors and defense counsel and judges conducted their trials, and ultimately in the kinds of sanctions.
The FBI's organized crime fighters badly needed a new direction. But when senior managers were told about RICO, they dismissed the idea as impractical. For RICO to work, the Bureau needed a complete overhaul of its investigative approach. The bureaucracy did not want that. It was much easier to do things as they'd always been done.
A traditional investigative behavior, the Hoover legacy, if you will, was a legacy of the individual agent working a lot of individual cases. We realized that in order to be effective against organized crime, using the RICO statute, we had to develop a teamwork approach. That meant changing that individualism to one of teamwork, sharing of information. The reaction that I got was, I can think of one typical boss in the office who, when told about the theory, this was very alien to him, and he made a comment to the effect that he didn't believe in intelligence work. He thought that working cases and locking people up was the name of the game. Naturally, he didn't prevail, and we did.
In the 1980s, the FBI began launching RICO investigations of the Mafia. They used the new law at Fulton Fish Market, opening a second investigation in the hope of cleaning out the LCN once and for all. The focus this time was the mob's meeting place, a restaurant opposite the market.
We learned through our investigation that the person who was, we believe to be the Genovese figurehead in the market at the time, Vincent Romano, was meeting regularly inside of Carmine's Bar and Grill with various aspects of the Fulton Fish Market, representatives from all parts of the Fulton Fish Market. He also met outside on the corner, right here, with various members of the Fulton Fish Market. As a result, we decided to put in electronic surveillance devices inside Carmine's Grill and in the vicinity of this corner where we could pick up conversations occurring on that corner. We also placed CCTVs, closed-circuit televisions, viewing the market area, and we did physical surveillances as well. In addition, we put wiretaps on several telephones of individuals we targeted as having control over the Fulton Fish Market.
In 1988, the FBI succeeded in having Vincent Romano and 3 other union officials banned from the Fulton Fish Market.
We immediately prevented them from the geographical area of the Fulton Fish Market at all. They were not allowed in the area, they were not allowed to do business in the area, which essentially, at least to those members of the Genovese crime family, paralyzed them from controlling the market.
And you couldn't have done that before the RICO laws were introduced?
No, we were unable to do that in the past. In the past, with a traditional criminal prosecution, you might be able to put an individual in jail, but as soon as he was released from jail, he could return to the place where he committed his crimes. In this case, he was banned, he or she is banned from that particular geographical area.
Inspectors now keep the fish market under close watch to ensure that the court order is obeyed.
I don't know if we can completely remove the LCN influence from the market. I think we've loosened their grip on the market. Some areas of the market now feel more free to conduct business legitimately without fear of reprisal. You will never remove all criminal activity from the market. RICO is essential. Without RICO, we would have had to do individual prosecutions of individual offenses such as individual extortion, individual thefts. You get 1 or 2 people, usually the lower level perpetrators of those crimes. With RICO, you can target the upper echelons of organized crime and remove them completely from the area.
In the 10 years that have passed since the FBI began using RICO, it's had a run of notable successes against the LCN. As one mafia boss after another has been led off to jail, more have come forward to break their vow of silence. The FBI believes that at last it is winning the war.
This chart represents the Colombo family as it appeared in 1991. At the top, we have the boss of the family, Victor Arena, who has been convicted of murder. His second-in-command, the consigliere, who was also an advisor to the boss, has become a cooperating witness for the government as a result of his arrest. And the third individual, the underboss, Joseph Scopo, is currently under arrest. The remaining capos that you see represented here, who are the first-line supervisors, and the soldiers, who are the individuals that commit the activities, the illegal activities under them, many of them are currently under investigation or have been arrested or have been convicted of murder and are awaiting sentencing. The result of our efforts against the Colombo organized crime family and the use of the RICO statutes have been to completely put the infrastructure and the leadership into disarray, whereby the family no longer can function as a unit, thereby reducing their power and their influence in whatever spheres of illegal activity they have. By and large, our overall effort against all the families in the United States have been pretty much the same.
I think they understand it's going to be a continuous, it's going to be a great part of their responsibility to keep at it every day for the foreseeable future. I don't anticipate a time when there won't be a problem of organized crime. The nature of it, the profit that can be realized from organizing criminal activity is going to be such that it's going to attract the criminal interest. So they've got to stay with it, continue the effort.
The FBI has learned the hard way that it's only by staying one step ahead that it stands a chance of success against the mafia. With RICO, it's certainly making up for a poor start. But it's clear there's little room for complacency.
A lot of people feel that organized crime is going through its death throes and its demise is readily available. I believe that they have mutated enough, changed enough, and adapted to the future that it is going to take a while. But they are deadly afraid of what's taking place with the Bureau, and now that they have a Bureau that is really after them.
As long as the mob provides the American public with things they want, maybe they shouldn't have them, but things they want, then those people are going to give the mob the money in return for those commodities. That's the real problem.
So you're fighting an uphill battle?
It always has been.
This program was produced by Connaught Films Limited for Channel 4 and for WETA, who are solely responsible for its content. Funding for this program is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by annual financial support from viewers like you. To order a video cassette of Inside the FBI for educational use only, call 1-800-328-PBS1 or write to the address on the screen.
This is PBS.
Next on Inside the FBI, a high-tech bureau.
I mean, I was in shock at what happened, you know, like I lost everything. Larry has really ruined my life, my brother's life, and my sister's life. He really has.
The killer was a gun collector. He'd shot Lois Johns in the back. Her body was found face down on a bed in his house in Tampa, Florida. Detective King asked the FBI to help. He thought the only way of convincing the jury was to recreate on a computer what had happened that night.
We have learned in the past that a picture basically speaks 1,000 words. So knowing that, the first thing I did was have the shooter get up on the bed, walks across. As he climbs up behind the victim, he then fires the shot. We noticed that one of the problems we had was the bullet path that went through the woman's body did not line up with the bullet path that went through the mattress. By rotating her body to match the two bullet paths, told us, one, she was awake, and two, she was pushing herself up off of the bed. This told us basically that the shooter was directly above her at the time the shot was fired.
This is PBS.